Good evening. Welcome to Oconee County Board of Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, April the 26th. If you're joining us virtually to comment during the public comment portions of the meeting, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. After a moment of silence, we're going to ask Commissioner Harden to lead us in the pledge. Please stand. Thank you.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and for all.
All right, first item of business will be to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is statements and remarks from citizens. This is for anything not on the agenda tonight. Anyone virtually? Thank you. Do we have any statements or remarks from commissioners? I do want to announce that we are seeking applications for appointments to the following advisory boards. We have the Oconee County Animal Services Board. That's 2 appointments for a 2-year term. Keep Oconee County Beautiful. We have 2 appointments also for 2-year terms. Family and Children Services, this will be 1 appointment for 5 years. And then our Tourism and Visitors Bureau will be 3 appointments for 2-year terms as well. You can apply online and the deadline is Tuesday, May 10th at noon. With that, we'll move into our Pavement Index presentation. Jody, are you? Sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is an update on the Pavement Index study that was authorized. We have Dan here from IMS, and he'll give a presentation on the kind of the background of what went through, the kind of the nitty gritty of how we come to the ratings and how it can be used in the future to select our paving programs for upcoming years. So
All right. Thank you, Jody. And thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission for having us in and working with IMS. So I'll jump in here into what we did for you folks. We'll chat a little bit about the current conditions, what pavement management is, our survey technology, and what we saw out in the field. And I'll be joined by our project manager on the project, Dave Bratton from Chicago, who's he'll join in and chime in as well. So a quick overview. So what is a pavement condition index? It's a 0 to 100 score. It's set industry standard by amount of distress is ASTM B6433, which is just fancy word for what type of distresses do we see, how severe and what's the extent of them over the roadway network on a segment by segment or block to block basis. And just continue. There we go. All right, so a quick overview looking at the network as a whole. So when we look at the county, almost 42,000 people, 384 centerline miles of roads. So that means the population can grow with the roadway network, and it's manageable right now with the current tax base. The overall condition of the entire network is a 78 on the 0 to 100 scale. And a backlog, these are roads that need reconstruction at 1%. These are very healthy metrics as a whole. To give you an idea, most of our clients, and we survey about 100 cities and counties each year, the average is about a PCI 65. So you folks are in pretty darn good shape for your pavement condition index. And a little bit into the pavement management process. So the whole point of this is to keep the good roads good. That's what pavement management and pavement preservation is. So the roads that fall within a PCI of 65 to 90, these are the roads that are ideal candidates to extend the life and keep them from deteriorating too quickly. So think of it as spend $1 or $2 today rather than $10 or $12 tomorrow. Just like doing an oil change with your car, it's, you want to preserve the life of your asset and your roadways. It's a large and expensive asset. So that's kind of the process of the engineering that goes behind it when we're recommending pavement management plans. And you can just kind of see the deterioration model here. As pavements age, the condition over time, the first 15% of the quality of the pavement, well, that's going to be over the initial 40% of life. So again, you think about your first 10 to 15 years, that's the ideal time to keep those roads good. And then after that, it starts deteriorating pretty rapidly, the roadways do. So we have a good base right now, but a lot of roads are in decent shape to keep them in good shape. And Dave will talk about this here in a little bit, but big picture wise, why you hire a consultant like us to come in and use the fancy technology and the engineering that goes into it. Well, we don't have unlimited funding, so we got to understand the budgets, how to prioritize and understand what we can do to get the most effective use out of the funding that we currently have, and target the roads at the best time possible to get the maximum dollar for the county going forward. And then with this, I'll hand it over to Dave if you're ready to chat a little bit about our survey process.
Yes, my name is Dave Bratton. I've been working with everyone at the county here for a little while to put together the plan for you guys. Try to just do a little bit of a run through of what the actual distresses are that we see out in the field and how they interact together to kind of form this PCI condition. So what we're looking at are things that you're going to see kind of every day as you're driving to work, going out on the weekends. You're going to see all these cracks, different distresses manifesting on the pavement, and that's what we're actually surveying here. So we're seeing different things like raveling, small cracks. They're going to play a very small part in the actual PCI. They don't account for a whole lot of deterioration, but there's going to be other more severe distresses that are associated with traffic loads. And that's going to be alligator cracking, wheel path rutting, potholes. Those actually represent a severe deterioration of the pavement. When we roll those all together, we can see what it looks like within the county. So here we have what's a PCI 98. And really anything in the mid to high 90 is considered a relatively new or completely new road. These are roads that don't have any cracks yet. They've got a pretty good longitudinal profile. They're going to provide a smooth ride and usually 15 to 20 years of service for the county before you need to start doing any type of maintenance. These are going to deteriorate down into the 80s with minor amounts of cracking showing up, down into the 70s with maybe a little bit of rutting showing up, especially on truck routes. Once we get to a PCI 65 like this, it's time for generally a first course of an overlay. So that's when we're going to come through, pull off the surface coat of the pavement, and then renew that surface with new material. Once streets get past this point, they're going to deteriorate a little bit further. More cracking is going to show up. They're still viable for an overlay, but once they get to PCI in the 30 to 40 range, we're going to see something like this, where there's that alligator cracking that's load related over the entire pavement surface. Once streets are at this point, the pavement itself is usually deteriorated to the point where an overlay isn't going to suffice as far as bringing the condition back up to a point where the life of the pavement is going to last as designed or expected. And here we can see another example of that within the county. Now, fortunately, the few very poor roads that you do have are on residential streets, or they're kind of at a dead end where you're not getting a lot of traffic. So that's going to allow you to focus on those streets in a little bit better condition, spend a little bit fewer dollars to do a renewal and address more pavements throughout the network with fewer dollars. Here again, we can see a condition distribution where most of the streets you have are in the very good to excellent category, and those are going to be really lightweight surface treatments, crack seals, things like that, that you can plan in to keep those in good condition, and then spend a little bit more funds to rehabilitate those streets that are in a little bit poorer shape. So once we've got this all compiled, what do we actually do with the information? We have a budgeting and planning process that we go through, and it's really kind of a three-step approach to bring this together. We have a research phase where we'll talk with the county staff, and we determine what costs are, what historical information we have as far as streets that are already set for planning. We'll talk about what actual rehab types are available, and then we'll put that all together to customize the actual analysis itself. So we're going to figure out realistic deterioration rates. We're going to apply the cost we talked to differently to different types of roads, whether it be local roads that is mostly small vehicle traffic, or larger county-wide roads that are going to be handling a little bit more truck traffic. We'll set some prioritizations to push funds toward those higher traveled roads. And in the end, we'll run different budget scenarios to say, what does it cost to actually get to certain different conditions, whatever goals we may have, or whatever targets we're trying to achieve. So the funding plan that we set out is actually going to be able to address streets at all different conditions within the county. You'll see PCIs in the 70 to 80 range are going to have much smaller unit rates for the activities than streets that are in worse conditions, the 40s, the 50s, all the way down to streets that have basically no life left, reconstruction candidates, and those are the most expensive. So what this looks like on a year-by-year basis is going to be different depending on what we actually decide for funding. So this graph here is a PCI. It's the street's overall condition for the network over time. Left-hand side, we can see conditions. We can pretty safely assume that if you spend no funds over the next 5 years, we're going to see streets deteriorate down to about a 70. On the other end of the spectrum, if we spend funds as they're needed, we're looking at about 34.6 million over the next 5 years, and that's going to bring PCIs up into the 86, 87 range, with a slight deterioration by the end of the 5-year period to around an 84. If we hop on to the next one, we can see what that looks like in the middle. So the blue line in this figure is the trend for funding per PCI. So on the left-hand side, we've got our conditions again, but on the bottom, we're looking at different funding levels in basic millions of dollars down there. So right now, the county is looking at about 3.5 million per year, and that's actually the projected amount that we found to keep conditions, well, at least backlog conditions that Dan had mentioned, those reconstruction streets at the point they are right now. It's going to increase the PCI a little bit and overall leave you in a little bit better shape than you're currently at. We can see that that blue trend line is going to plateau at about 7.5 million per year. That's actually right about where the additional T-Splat funds would put us. So if we're looking for an ideal amount of funding over the next 5-year period, that's going to be about where we want to be. If we hop to the next slide, we can see what those distributions look like over the network. So the current system is sitting at a 78. Backlog is at about 0.6%, and that's the red bars. If we were to go forward with the 3.5 million per year, we're going to see that bump to a PCI of 80. Backlog is going to stay about where you are, and you're going to see a slight decrease in those poor condition roads, PCI 70 and below. At excuse me, at a budget of 7 million, we're going to see all of those PCI 70 and below streets rehabilitated into very good or excellent category streets, and that's going to set you up to basically have a proactive preservation-based rehabilitation program going forward. So we can make a couple recommendations based on this information. Ideally, it would be best to try and improve the network a little bit. So PCI of 80 with a backlog below 1% is probably a good target to try and hit at minimum. If possible, exploring those additional funds to get the PCI at about 55 or an 85 or above would be ideal. Your current $3.5 million expected budget per year over the next 5 years is going to hit that PCI goal of 80 and maintain a low backlog. This is all dependent, though, on current costing. So as years go by and as the plan is implemented, it's best to revisit these rehabilitation strategies, make sure the costing is up to date, just so that any increases or decreases in those costs can be relayed into the funding needs. This is going to set the county up for, again, rehabilitation plan going forward that's more focused on those cheaper options that are going to allow basically a greater coverage of rehabilitation over the network for a lower dollar amount. And then as time goes by, you'll want to resurvey the streets just to make sure that we're tracking performance correctly. So one of the main parts of this analysis is deterioration over time and determining what PCIs are in year 2, 3, 4, and 5. You'll want to make sure that those models are up to date, those conditions are up to date, so that you can better forecast for the future. With that, we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners?
Got a few.
First of all, when you did your analysis, did it just look at the surface and the cracking, or did it check the depth of the base? And
Yep. So with our survey equipment, how we handle the distresses, there's the load related distresses such as alligator cracking and rutting. So we can understand how the base and sub base is actually performing based on the presence of those distresses and how severe they are. So while we don't have the exact depth of the base or subgrade, we can understand if it's too weak to add an overlay or if it needs to be reconstructed at that point.
so a large majority of our roads are old soil base, which has no gravel under it. So it was, it was basically, some of it had concrete added to it, but most of it's just a soil compaction type base. So how do you see us in the future rectifying that?
Dave, did you hear that regarding the roads that just have a compacted base? And
I heard the first part of it, but my internet cut out for the last sentence of your question. It was, how do you go forward doing something, I believe?
yeah, handling the roads that just have a compacted base and didn't have any gravel laid down, an additional layer.
It's really going to depend on traffic levels. So if you have a stabilized base and an inch or two of asphalt on top, that's most likely going to be sufficient for roads that are going to have maybe just 10, 15 cars on them per day. If you do see increases in traffic on those roads, it may be a candidate for reconstruction, or they have various types of, it's called full depth reclamation. You can use a lot of the material that's already on the ground. There's a couple machines that come through and basically grind up that material, so you're going to have a mixture of that soil base and the asphalt surface. It's going to use another stabilizing product and then lay that down as a thick base that you can then pave on. So depending on the traffic that you're going to see going forward, that could be an option for some of the
And if there's
inadequate designed roads have.
and those, if for a second round of survey, say if we would come back in 5 years time, that would stand out if those roads are deteriorating way too quickly than expected. And that's where we would recommend maybe some deflection testing where we actually put a 15 to 20,000 pound load on the pavement and see what kind of base we're dealing with, take some cores out. And that's where, if we're expecting, growth in population, more traffic, that's where we might have to revise the plans and target more funding for reconstruction on those roads. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, yes and no.
Okay. You can always send more questions to Justin and send our way as well.
So you had a slurry seal coat. Is that sort of like what people do to parking lots? Similar?
Somewhat.
It's pretty similar. Yeah, there's a little bit more additive in it, and some of them can actually get like a fine sand or aggregate in there just to improve its wearing ability. But it's not a structural increase to the pavement. It's going to basically seal the cracks, similar to what you do on your driveway, but that should last a little bit longer than those.
Waterproofing, water tighting, and it's a little bit better than a chip seal where it's not just tossing stones all over when you drive over it.
So would that replace your tar stuff you put in the cracks like we just did on Mars Hill Road?
Yeah, it's full pavement width.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you get to a certain level of cracking on the pavement, it's less cost effective to do it crack by crack. So the slurry seal kind of acts as just a similar approach, but you can lay it down with a truck real quick.
Yeah.
The question I had, Mark's the expert on the road. I just looking at the numbers, but it looks like what you're suggesting is $3.5 to $7 million a year.
Yeah, so we're in a good enough shape right now and at the funding level to really keep on improving upon the strong base that's already that we see here in the county. So you're in a really good shape. So that should be the goal, the aim. Dave, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but relative to what we've seen with other counties, you want to keep.
I only heard part of the question. For some reason, my audio keeps cutting in and out.
Yeah, it's just
Uh,
basically our recommendation at the 3.5 million minimum to the 7 million upset.
Yeah, 3.5 is going to keep you in pretty good shape where you are. If the funds are available, it's usually best to apply them just because it gives you that little bit of bump in condition where if funds, 7, 8 years out aren't available anymore, you're able to kind of lose a little bit of condition. You've got a cushion built up, and it's not really going to become a problem, 10 years down the line.
And also what I'm hearing is even though we look good today, that doesn't mean 2 to 3 months down. If we didn't do anything, if we just sat on it, then those costs are probably going to go up.
Yeah, so
If
obviously.
you, yeah,
Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
if you defer maintenance, it's generally going to cost you more in the future to regain that condition than it would be to do ongoing maintenance year by year.
Yeah, so with how healthy the condition is, the cost of deferral is actually really high for the county. So to give an example, agencies have a lot of roads that need reconstruction. They're not really losing equity because the cost for reconstruction it's built in. So that equity is already lost. Having a lot of streets in good condition, you're losing equity a lot quicker than a lot of other agencies that aren't as in good shape.
Thank you. Very interesting.
But the 36 million funding over 5 years gets us to the mid to upper 80s in the PCI score.
So
Yes, it'll take you to an 87 about, and a little bit of a lag. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it'll take you to about an 87, and then you'll deteriorate to around an 84. Whereas if you spend, well, that's going to be a front-loaded budget. There'll be, I don't know the exact values offhand, but you'd probably be spending 15, 20 million in years 1 and 2, and then lowering the amount. Whereas if you stick at about that 7 million per year amount, you'll actually be at a little bit higher PCI at the end of the 5-year period.
And again, it wouldn't be as drastic because there's not a lot of roads that need to be fully reconstructed. So if there was a lot of roads that needed to be reconstructed, that number would actually be a little bit higher. But in your case, it could be reconstructing roads that don't really need to be reconstructed at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Anything?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I first want to say I think it's excellent that we have this data to base our decisions on instead of just a gut feeling or how it looks to somebody with an eyeball. But I really appreciate it because the data will help us that we have now to make some good choices in the future. This is not a question for IMS, but more of just an internal question. I think, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned we had 35 miles of remaining dirt roads in the county. From a budgeting standpoint, is there any request or any pressure from any of these of our residents that are living on dirt roads to not live on a dirt road anymore?
No, most folks that are on the dirt roads want to stay dirt roads now.
Okay. So as far as going forward, as our budgeting, we can focus on
Existing.
our maintaining our currently. Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure because
Yeah.
For budget purposes, I don't even know where the dirt roads are. Is Marshall Store Road still a dirt road? Is it? Yeah. So I didn't, it's been years since I've been down that road. So I wasn't sure about how much pressure we had on converting these dirt roads to paved streets.
We will get a request every now and then from a resident, but their neighbors are not usually in favor of that. So.
So they have to give it right away or just don't.
Yeah, right away. And then there's different development standards that have to be met on if you're not on a dirt road. So yeah, or makes it easier for development around the area when it's a paved road.
Y'all may remember that in the early 90s, there was a pretty good push in the county to pave a bunch of roads. And it kind of
Backfire.
winnowed out all of the roads that anybody had any real interest in. And it caused some development to occur.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
guess one of the questions I got, now, we've had this process done, the evaluation has been completed, indexed. We've got a list of how the roads are, of complete roads that were evaluated through this. And he talked about a three-phase thing. Is that separate from the contract we had to do this now? Or is that to move forward, the 1, 2, 3 phase thing, how we're going to do the budgeting stuff? Is that something they come back in and work with us on? Or is that something we work with?
So we have a dynamic tool that comes out of, and it crashed my computer. It's really robust. But it has all the road segments on and options. And so there's the ability to maneuver those up and down. And so we'll use that to inform in the fall what I would call the upcoming year's paving program is. And we'll work with our contractor and have them put eyes sort of on it and the different surface treatments that go with it and move that going forward. So the plan is sort of to use the tool and to balance out the options for the paving program itself.
Gotcha. And my last question would be, if you do just the roads that are on the lower scale of the index, it's not the ones that are in good shape, even though I understand the maintenance that makes it better for us. I mean, how does that change the index overall?
So with your current conditions, I believe most of the roads in worse shape are selected in the initial 5-year budgets. So it really, again, going back, you're in pretty good shape. So some of those more expensive projects can be selected right off the bat.
Yeah, so
Let me
that's,
just follow up on what he said. I'm trying to make sure I word this right. What I would be curious about are the ones that are on the border. Ones he's talked about, we know they're in that lower tier, but the ones, let's say we backed off. What kind of breathing room do we have before the ones in that category? You know, they make the cut today, but we go 18 months and we didn't do much. We're just kind of, how soon do they get to that lower tier?
Yeah. Dave, did you hear that one? Talk about critical set points and all that good stuff. Did you hear that one?
For some reason, I can't really hear the council's mics. I get about 1 second out of 5 seconds talking.
I think I can have that question and have that turned around to you guys with just some kind of a white paper on what we're looking at on our road system.
Because I think that's a critical thing is the ones that are down to the lower, that tier where, you know, you get by, but how close they are to going into that bottom one.
Well, they don't degrade on smooth curves, but
Yeah. So
faster.
based on this, again, depending on the distresses present, again, some PCI 65 streets are in much better shape than other PCI 65s just because the types of load related distresses present for the entire section. So, and like Justin said, we can get a little summarized white paper on
Okay.
the technical
Because I
process
think
too.
it goes into what Mark said, those roads that are out there that maybe weren't constructed the way they do now, how close some of them are before they get into the lower run.
Okay, understood. All right, I can follow up, Dave. I can follow up that question with you, and we can get back to Justin so commissioners can. Get a little
Yeah,
bit
I
better.
apologize. For some reason, I can only hear what's coming out of Dan's mic pretty much. Dan, maybe if you could walk around and hand everyone your mic.
I know it is portable.
Did you guys take a look at our current rating that we had and compare that to what, if we didn't have that current rating, what would you have recommended?
For the condition, for the overall condition of the roads before we came out to survey. So our process was completely different. It wouldn't have been an apples to apples comparison. So based on, even with our equipment and technology, the LCMS system that we use, the laser van, measures width and depth of cracks at the millimeter level. So it really wouldn't have given us a lot of great information to base our initial analysis on to see how the roads are deteriorating. If that makes sense.
Well, I guess my question, go back, is if we had you know, like we just paved Simonton Bridge Road.
Mhm.
Did you do analysis on that before we paved it?
Let's see, I don't know if we can,
What, sorry, I
Close.
didn't hear it.
Was it Simon-
Simonton Bridge?
yeah, so Dave can look it up real quick and see what the PCI was.
And then the other one
Simonton
was,
Bridge.
one that had 98 was, I believe, Hog Mountain Road.
Mhm.
If you guys had evaluated that one beforehand.
So I believe that one was complete, that was already resurfaced when we surveyed Hog Mountain.
It depends, for Simonton Bridge, some areas closer to Rose Drive, Castle Drive are in much better shape. So we may have either caught it mid-construction or, we did catch if it was partially reconstructed part of the road. It looks like maybe the break point may have been at Norton Road. Does that sound about right for where construction may have ended?
Yeah,
We're
you
probably
get a
in
few head-
progress on that.
It's a 2-foot line.
Yeah. That was part of the reason for that overlay was because of the addition to the lane width.
We did a 2-foot widening on that road.
Okay.
And then, so it had to have an overlay to
Okay.
bridge it.
All right, so Dave, I got kind of a quick question. So if we assume uniform construction on that roadway, would we see reflective cracking that would show the base and subgrade on the newer resurfacing would be popping up in the next year or two, next couple of years a bit more quickly, or if the base and subgrade wasn't in great condition? Kind of
I guess it depends on what the loads are going to be and how much it's going to flex that pavement. If the cracks that were covered go all the way through the pavement layer down to the base, you'll probably get reflective cracking a little bit more if it was, again, load related. The opposite end of the spectrum, you could have shrinkage related cracking that's just from aging of the pavement, and if that's kind of a top up cracking, the overlay will basically take care of those. I think I heard you say there was a widening. It's really all going to depend on how the contractor mated those two surfaces as far as the new and the old road as to whether or not a joint reflective crack will come up through that overlay.
be a good case study for a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
We had a question on Rocky Branch Road, Dave, PCI.
Rocky Branch, all right, let me do a little scrolling here. Rocky Branch looks to be all in relatively good shape. Lowest score is a 72. So there may be some sections that need a little bit of surface treatment or maybe a patch here or there, but the rest of the segments in high 80s, low 90s, which is relatively good shape, maybe some crack sealing here or there.
That's probably on the North Oconee side. The other side wouldn't have been that high.
Yeah.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I got one.
Okay.
Have you guys studied the difference between, say, a high car traffic load versus a light or a minimal amount of truck traffic load? Is there any correlation there?
Yeah, Dave, I don't know if you heard that, but we didn't have the ADT data. He's asking about the traffic loading, so how that impacts the deterioration models.
So was it low vehicle, like passenger traffic compared to truck traffic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Generally, truck traffic is going to be much more detrimental to the pavement just because it's a single heavier load. The repeated loads of vehicle traffic isn't as much of a factor as far as deteriorating the pavement. For every truck that goes by, you can have thousands of passenger vehicles go over the same pavement before it becomes a similar deterioration factor to the pavement.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you all very much. We appreciate working with you. Everyone was great to work with over the course of this project. Thank you.
Our next item is the first reading and public hearing for the proposed updates to the no-through truck ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Coincidentally, this is with truck traffic. And no through truck on the ordinance. What this is an attempt to square away our legacy ordinance with the built environment of Oconee County. The first read was scheduled for tonight. However, the legal ad was sent in to the paper. However, the legal ad did not run. And so we will need to move this item to the following month's agenda setting meeting and then have our first read at that time.
So this will just be postponed to our next work session after the proper advertisements. Any questions on that?
Can we ask questions about the ordinance or did we wait?
I think we need to wait till that time comes. Next time is discuss a resolution to name the designated officer to request sales tax information from the Georgia Department of Revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is just perfunctory with Wes Gettings, no longer the finance director. We need to change on the resolution the name to Melissa Braswell as the designated officer for this purpose.
Any questions on that? You're all right for consent agenda?
Yes, sir.
Any public comment? Anyone virtually? All right, thank you. Next time is discuss the Parks and Recreation FY23 concession services contract with Oconee County Football Club and Oconee County Little League.
Commissioners, this is just an annual renewal of our concessionaire agreement with Oconee County Little League, providing those concession services at Bogart, Veterans Park, and Herman T. Michael, and baseball, softball fields, and Oconee Football Club, providing those services to OVP soccer. There is no changes in the agreement from the previous years, and we recommend continuing that agreement with both entities.
Any questions for Lisa on that? Nope. Thank you. All right, for consent agenda? Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next item is discuss the awarding the guaranteed maximum price for construction of the administrative building.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As previously discussed, we've been working with our contractor, Matthias, to generate a guaranteed maximum price. With some allowances built in, they've come with a maximum guaranteed maximum price of $14,800,000 for the building. This would be paid for out of the bond fund proceeds, which are $14,866,000. So I would request moving forward to award the guaranteed maximum price to Matthias for that contract with all budget amendments as necessary. And just as an additional, we'll be looking to bid the roundabout project sometime fairly soon. So that award will come in the next month or two, which is the companion project to the administrative building. But this is for the actual site building construction itself.
Any questions for Justin on that? So been a very interesting process in this environment on getting pricing and secured. So we do have our guaranteed price. You know, if things go crazy, we may have to come back and look at that in the future. I think there'll be something for later.
There is. I have a Coca-Cola bid on its schedule.
Okay.
I think I might be buying a Coke by the end of the day.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. Speak up. Are you changing your completion date, ribbon cut date?
Nope.
Very good. So this is very exciting, and look forward to seeing that. Construction is slated to start June 6th. So you should see stuff moving on June the 6th of this year. Be all right for consent agenda on this item? Or anybody? Good. Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next time is discuss the low-income household water assistance program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is a request that a citizen made. There is a low-income household water assistance program that is run through DFAC's office. They utilize the ARPA funds to assist low-income houses with their water bill. And so the agency approached our Water Resources Department about the possibility. Functionally, the way this works is a potential customer would go to DFAC's, work out an arrangement directly with them. DFAC's would pay some portion of their bill if there is an issue with it out of these ARPA funds. The only issue for the county would be the reporting elements of it that the ARPA funds would require as a basis on the administrative fee side. But this would be something that they've been requested to help some low-income households as far as paying some water bills. Happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Any questions on that? You all right for consent agenda? Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next time is discuss the railroad agreement for State Route 15 water line upgrade project.
I won't take too much of your time here. A while back, we engaged Po Boys, which is our own demand services contractor, to do a water line project down SR 15 from the Larry Station to Creek Street. Due to higher priority projects, we've since kicked that can down the road. But there is one portion of it that we would like to complete, and that is the section that goes up under the railroad at Creek Street. I'm sure most of you are familiar with utility and right-of-way agreements. With any utility owner, you have to get either a signed agreement or like DOT requires a special encroachment permit or something like that to go into the right-of-ways. Well, the railroad requires the same for us. We've been back and forth probably for about the past 6 months trying to reword this thing, get it revised where both parties would, I guess, agree to it. So that's why we'd like to go ahead and get it done now and do this portion of it to where it doesn't delay us in the future. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, if we have an agreement with the railroad company, I highly advise us to act on it.
The cost was $500. That was, we've done that through a consultant. So we've been purchased.
Any questions? You all right for consent agenda?
And I know you got questions.
Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you.
Folks.
Our next item is discuss the 2022 expanding access to COVID-19 vaccines through the aging network.
Evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Here for another contract. Northeast Georgia Regional Commission has received some other funding through the state of Georgia to help us get out information on COVID vaccines. And our award amount is $3,106.73. This will aid us in identifying local senior citizens who may need help getting to vaccination sites or more information about receiving vaccinations. It will also give us the opportunity to help them with scheduling if they're unable to work with their family members and getting those vaccination appointments and follow-up appointments as well. We are able to provide transportation to the sites if they are already part of our senior network. However, if they're just a community member, we will refer them to this, the aging resources, and they will provide transportation for them. And that aging resources is through the Northeast Georgia Regional Commission.
Any questions on this? You all right for consent agenda?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next time is discuss RFP 22-03-011. This is renovations for the Frank Norris Building. Sheriff?
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman, Commissioner Board. I'm here to talk about the proposal or whatever questions you may have about the Norris Building. Of course, it's old. It's very old. The plan is we put it out for contract to bid on renovation, and we had several that came out to look at the property. Only 3 submitted proposals for for the renovation. And out of the three, the one that came in the lowest bid was Garland and Associates Contractors. We had, out of the three, there was one that was way out of spec for anything that we thought the project would cost to do. But they were evaluated based on the previous experience, the references, and the cost proposal that was given to them, or that they gave to us. And that our committee at the office, we recommend that we took the lowest bidder, which is Garland. Garland is not a government contract company, but they are able to start immediately on the project. One of the other bidders was a government contract that came in a good bit higher than Garland did, but they were going to be delayed in when they could start the project itself. We looked at it and we came in a little more than what we thought we were going to have to do for it, but pretty much it's a complete renovation of the interior of the building. Nothing to do with the roof. We're going to reuse the HVAC that's in there. All of the plumbing, so the foundation itself is going to stay the same, even though we have terracotta pipes still under that building from ages ago. We're still going to maintain that part of it, and then just pretty much take out everything on the interior and remodel it more or less to make it a little more professional looking building for the general public to come in, to sit down with deputies to do reports, cleaner place for supervisors to come in and do their reports and things. So that's what we're asking. Appreciate taking any questions.
Any questions on that? So we did a mid-year budget amendment on that not long ago for $250,000. So this will require a budget amendment of $11,850. No problem with that financially. So, and this will be for the life of the project. This will probably not be done by year end. So this project will continue on into part of next fiscal year. Good. You all right for consent agenda?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff.
All right. Thank y'all very much.
Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next item is discuss a new engine for fire station number 7 in Bogart.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. We have a new engine that we had in SPOS, and my plans were to be here next year at this time to present the new engine, but today it takes over 2 years to get an engine, so we're doing it tonight. So we had a truck committee to review specs and approve the specs for this new truck. It's a Sutphen brand, and if you approve this truck, it will, all the fire stations will have a Sutphen brand frontline engine. So all the engines will be the same brand, same way of operation, which is good for our firefighters. So we have a price from HGAC, and it's for your consideration.
Any questions of Bruce on this? So this will be approving the purchase contract, and then we'll fund it. We won't write any checks till the truck shows up. So that'll be a couple of years down the road. No questions? Be all right for consent agenda?
Yes.
Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Next time I discuss the bid award and budget amendment for bridge repairs.
Chairman, Commissioners, this item of business is a bid for culvert repairs, bridge repairs. It's 3 box culverts, and this was based off of the Georgia DOT regular inspections they do. So we're trying to chip off those. And the 3 bridges, 3 culverts are Antioch Church Road, McCree Gin Road, and Oliver Bridge Road. We had 3 bidders come, prospective bidders come to the pre-bid, and only 1 bid was received when we opened the bids. And it was from E&D Contracting Services, and the total bid was $220,706. This funding is available in our current year Public Works budget. We had a couple of projects that were closed out, so we were able to transfer the funds that were left from those projects into the bridge repair line item. So it is funded, but we do ask that future year budget amendments as needed, not to exceed the contract amount, be included in the event that the repairs go into the next fiscal year. But the recommendation would be to award all three of the culvert repairs to E&B Contracting Services.
Any questions on that? How often is that DOT inspection?
They do inspections every 2 years.
Every 2 years. Yes. Very good. Be all right for consent agenda? Thank you. Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Thank you. Now we get an update on the FY23 budget. Melissa?
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm here to give you an update on the FY23 budget. Back in January, we presented and was approved with the budget submittal plan. And we have used that as our guideline to work through the current budget process. So according to that, as of February 18th, department heads and elected officials provided their budget requests to finance, and finance and administration since that time has had the opportunity to go through the budget requests and provide back to the departments an interim budget that's recommended for FY23. Departments have been able to review that and have been able to request meetings with finance and administration to discuss any areas of concerns or specific interest. So we have taken all that into consideration, and we are working on making our final changes so that we can present to you next Tuesday at the board meeting a presentation of our proposed FY23 budget. So that will be available to you then, and we'll also post that on the website afterwards for public viewing, following up with our public hearings that will occur on May 24th and June 7th at scheduled meetings, along with the requested adoption on June 7th as well.
Any questions? Thank you. Next item is discuss the Calls Creek plant upgrade to 3 million gallons per day, phase 1.
Evening again, Commissioner. No, nothing much to update here. I will say that the GMP is actually going to be $6,613,935. It will be funded by or through SPLOSH funds and capacity fees, and we will make budget amendments as necessary up to that contract amount for the life of the project. Any questions?
Can you say that number one more time? Yeah.
No, $6,613,935.
Any questions about them? Be all right. Oh, go ahead.
I knew it.
Just so. Give me the timelines on this once we approve.
We're thinking about 18 months. It's hard to give, I mean, in all honesty, it's hard for a contractor to give a good lead time on a time frame on anything right now with lead times for construction materials. I'm sure Mr. Thomas can, argue that too.
So 18 months include the lead time?
Yeah, we're thinking 18 months.
Again, this is just phase 1, so we won't be producing 3 million gallons a day just yet. Yeah.
It won't be long after
Yeah.
that.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
That's the hope.
Any other questions about them? All right, for consent agenda?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Adam. Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Now it's time to discuss the alcohol license request for the Chop House. This is at 2055 Oconee Connector. And Nick Joyner as the registered agent.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners. Chop House has made an application for a new alcohol license for restaurant sales of beer, wine, and distilled spirits. The registered agent, Mr. Nick Joyner, has completed his RAS training and will be located at 2055 Oconee Connector in Athens, and the application is complete. So we do request approval of this alcohol license.
Any questions on this item? You all right for consent agenda? Very good. Any public comment? Anyone virtually? Do need a executive session for land acquisition and personnel item.
Make a motion that we adjourn to
executive session for land acquisition personnel.
Second.
Have a motion second, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Need a motion to go back in regular session. All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Saxon,
Motion adjourned.
Second.
we adjourned.